February 9th, 2004. A quiet Monday night in rural New Hampshire. The temperature hovered just below freezing. Snow drifted over the two-lane stretch of Route 112, a road that winds through the woods like a ribbon of ice. Around 7:30 p.m., a black Saturn sedan was found crashed against a snowbank. The engine still warm, the driver's seat empty, no footprints leading away, no sign of struggle. The driver was 21-year-old Maura Murray, a nursing student from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She had vanished, without a trace. Maura's disappearance is one of the most perplexing mysteries in modern American true crime. A college student, athletic, disciplined, and bright, gone within minutes, in a place where almost nothing ever happens. It's been called the internet's first missing person case, a mystery that's outlasted theories, documentaries, and 2 decades of speculation. But behind all the noise, behind the online detectives and message boards, there's a real person who vanished in the cold. Tonight, we're going to retrace her steps, piece by piece, from the days before she disappeared to the last moments anyone ever saw her. Maura was born on May 4th, 1982, in Hanson, Massachusetts, the fourth of 5 children in a close-knit family. Her father, Fred, worked in maintenance. Her mother, Lori, was a nurse. She was known for her discipline, a strong student, a track runner, someone who planned her future carefully. After high school, Maura entered West Point, the U.S. military academy, where she studied chemical engineering for a short time before transferring to UMass Amherst to pursue nursing. Her life looked steady from the outside, but like many young adults, she was juggling pressure, school, relationships, family expectations. And in the weeks leading up to February 2004, cracks began to show. On the surface, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But in the days before she vanished, Maura's behavior shifted, subtle but telling. On Thursday, February 5th, while working her campus security shift, she broke down in tears after a phone call with her sister. Her supervisor sent her home. That weekend, she visited her father in Massachusetts. They went car shopping. They had dinner together. Everything seemed fine. But late that Saturday night, Maura crashed her father's new car on her way back to campus. No one was hurt. Her father brushed it off as a simple mistake, but some say it marked the beginning of something unraveling. By Monday, February 9th, Maura would email her professors, saying she'd be gone for a week due to a death in the family. There was no death. She packed her car, withdrew cash from an ATM, and began to drive north. Maura Murray left the UMass Amherst campus around 4:30 p.m. No goodbye note, no message to friends, just a quiet exit. The GPS era hadn't quite begun. She printed out MapQuest directions, old school, deliberate. Her destination, a small area near Burlington, Vermont. Maybe she was going on a trip to clear her mind. Maybe she was running from something. At 3:40, she stopped at an ATM and withdrew $280, nearly everything in her account. On the security footage, she looks calm, focused, no sign of distress. Minutes later, she went to a nearby liquor store. A box of Franzia wine, Kahlua, Bailey's, and vodka. Enough for a weekend away, or maybe something darker. From there, she got back on the road, heading north into the cold. The drive from Amherst to New Hampshire is long, roughly 2.5 hours. That night, the air was dry but freezing. Darkness falls early in February. Out here, once you pass the last gas station, it's just you, the trees, and the sound of tires over ice. Cell service is spotty. The houses are far apart. For reasons no one fully understands, Maura kept going, past safer roads, deeper into the woods, heading toward a place called Haverhill, New Hampshire, a town barely on the map. At approximately 7:27 p.m., a local resident, Faith Westman, heard a sudden thud outside her home. When she looked out her window, she saw a black Saturn facing the wrong direction on Route 112. Its front end was smashed into a snowbank. The airbags had deployed. Inside, she could see movement, a figure. Faith dialed 911. It was 7:27 p.m. Just minutes later, a neighbor driving home, Butch Atwood, a local school bus driver, saw the scene and pulled over to help. He described a young woman standing beside the car, shivering slightly. She told him she was fine, that she'd already called AAA. Butch knew there was no cell reception there. He offered to call from his house anyway. she politely declined. When he drove away, she was still standing by the car, lights flashing against the snow. It would be the last time anyone ever saw Maura Murray. Police arrived at 7:46 p.m., 19 minutes after Faith's 911 call. By then, Maura was gone. Her car was locked, the airbags deployed. Inside were her belongings, a packed bag of clothes, textbooks, toiletries, and a stuffed animal from her boyfriend. There were signs she'd been drinking. A box of wine had spilled across the seats, but there were no footprints leading away from the road, no drag marks, no blood, just an empty car and silence. Officers searched the immediate area, flashlights cutting through the dark, but there was no trace of her. Some believe she ran off into the woods to hide or get help and succumbed to the cold. Others believe someone picked her up before police arrived. But that night, on Route 112, all that remained of Maura Murray was her car, sitting quietly in the snow, the engine ticking as it cooled. A mystery had just begun. Officer Cecil Smith arrived on Route 112 at 7:46 p.m., just 19 minutes after the 911 call. What he found looked simple at first: a one-car accident on a lonely winter road. The black Saturn's front end was pressed into a snowbank, its rear still jutting slightly into the road. The hazard lights blinked in slow rhythm, a pulse of red and amber against the white snow. But something didn't feel right. The driver's seat was empty. The doors were locked, the windshield was cracked, airbags out, but no one was inside. Officer Smith looked around. The air was still. He saw no footprints leading away from the car, no drag marks, no tracks that would suggest someone running or limping into the woods. The temperature was around 15 degrees Fahrenheit, bitterly cold. Anyone outside for long without proper gear wouldn't last. He called in backup, then started scanning the roadside ditches with a flashlight, beam cutting across tree trunks and snow. But there was only silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like it's waiting for something to happen. In those first minutes, neighbors had watched from their windows. Faith Westman, who made the 911 call, told police she'd seen a man smoking a cigarette inside the car, though others believe she may have mistaken the reflection of an airbag or her own porch light. Another neighbor, Butch Atwood, the school bus driver who'd stopped earlier, confirmed that he'd spoken to a young woman, Maura, standing outside the vehicle. She insisted she didn't need help. He drove home just down the road and called 911 again, reporting the crash. By the time officers arrived, she had vanished. Local police, firefighters, and neighbors began searching the immediate area that night. Flashlights cut through the woods, beams glinting off ice. They called her name over and over, Maura, but the forest gave no reply. Dogs barked in the distance, car doors slammed, radios crackled. For a small New England town, it was the kind of night no one forgets. Officers canvassed the homes nearby, hoping someone might have seen her walking or been approached for help. But every door they knocked on told the same story. No one had seen her. As the search stretched past midnight, the snow began to fall harder. Visibility dropped, the cold deepened, and with each hour that passed, hope slipped further away. By dawn, the scene had changed. A tow truck hauled away Maura's Saturn. Officers documented the interior, the airbags, the empty bottles, the stuffed animal she'd kept in the back seat. There was no wallet, no cell phone, no sign of foul play. When the sun rose over the mountains, search teams assembled. Firefighters, volunteers, state police, and K-9 units. The dogs caught her scent from the car, followed it east along the road for about 100 yards. Then the trail ended abruptly in the middle of the road, as if she'd vanished into thin air or been picked up by someone passing through. That morning, Maura's father, Fred Murray, received the call no parent ever wants. He drove straight to New Hampshire, desperate, confused, clinging to the belief that his daughter must have gotten lost or injured nearby. When he arrived and saw the crash site for himself, his fear turned to disbelief. Everything about the scene defied logic. Her car locked, her belongings untouched. No footprints, no clues. Police considered the possibility that Maura had wandered off intoxicated or distraught, maybe into the woods. But as daylight faded again and no trace appeared, no footprints, no body, no scent trail, that theory grew thinner. Whatever happened to Maura that night, it hadn't been random. The search that began as routine had just crossed into the unknown. Over the next 48 hours, the search for Maura Murray intensified. Police, firefighters, and volunteers fanned out across miles of rugged terrain. They followed snowmobile paths, frozen rivers, and abandoned cabins. K-9 units sniffed the edges of the road. Helicopters hovered low with heat sensors scanning the trees. But Maura's trail, what little of it there was, had gone cold almost as soon as it began. Every hour that passed made it less likely she was still near that crash site. And yet, there was nowhere else to look. Fred Murray arrived in Haverhill that morning, exhausted, terrified, and already running through worst-case scenarios. He retraced every possible route she might have taken, walking miles of road himself. He searched ditches, barns, and sheds, calling out her name until his voice cracked. Reporters who met him that week described a man who refused to stop moving. "If she's out here, I'll find her," he said. For days he slept in his car or in cheap motels nearby, waking before dawn to begin again. Despite the large-scale effort, communication between agencies was uneven. Local police led the case, but coordination with state authorities lagged. Leads came in, but many were contradictory. Possible sightings, strange calls, pieces that didn't fit. Investigators checked nearby motels and rest stops. They questioned residents up and down Route 112. Still, there was no evidence of a crime, no indication she'd been abducted or attacked. Yet no sign she'd simply walked away either. It was as if both explanations canceled each other out. By the end of the week, news crews began arriving from Boston and New York. Cameras captured Fred and his family distributing flyers, handing out photos of Maura's face, bright smile, dark hair, brown eyes. Small towns along the Connecticut River began recognizing her instantly. Posters appeared in grocery stores, gas stations, libraries. The coverage drew attention, but not answers. Police maintained that Maura's disappearance was still classified as a missing person case, not a criminal one. For her family, that distinction felt impossible to accept. As days passed without results, exhaustion began to show. Volunteers thinned out. The media shifted focus, but Fred stayed. He stood by the roadside, eyes scanning the forest. He held on to the one thought that kept him from falling apart, that maybe somewhere she was alive, waiting. He told a reporter, "You can't lose your child and go home. You just can't." Around this time, the internet began to take hold of Maura's story. It started with small true crime forums, people sharing timelines, analyzing photos of the crash site, trading theories late into the night. The case had no resolution, no closure, and that vacuum drew people in. Some searched to help, others searched to solve. Threads multiplied, new theories appeared daily, strangers trying to make sense of something senseless. The mystery became more than an investigation. It became a digital echo chamber of empathy, curiosity, and obsession. As attention grew, so did conflict. Family members sometimes clashed with online investigators over privacy, accuracy, and tone. The same technology that kept Maura's name alive also complicated the search for truth. Misinformation spread quickly, blurred photos, unverified stories, rumors mistaken for fact. Through it all, the one certainty remained: Maura was still missing. By late February, formal searches were scaled back. The landscape thawed, revealing no new evidence. The Murray family returned home, though Fred often came back to New Hampshire, driving that same stretch of Route 112 again and again. Sometimes he'd park where the Saturn had once been, step out into the cold and listen. He'd look down the road and whisper her name, just loud enough to feel he was still reaching for her. For him, and for thousands following online, Maura wasn't just a missing person anymore. She had become a question that refused to fade. In the years that followed, the road where Maura disappeared became a landmark of questions. Locals grew used to seeing search parties, new faces, new maps, the same hope. Each season brought someone new who believed they might find what everyone else had missed. But Route 112 kept its silence. The trees, the river, the snow, they all remained the same, watching quietly as the world kept asking. Officially, the case never closed. Over the next decade, New Hampshire State Police continued to receive tips, hundreds of them. Some led to excavations, others to interviews and re-interviews. In 2006, search teams returned to the area with ground-penetrating radar. In 2013, another round of investigators re-examined evidence from the crash site, comparing DNA samples, reanalyzing the car. Each effort brought possibilities, but no proof. The questions that began in 2004 still had no answers. Then came a new wave: journalists, filmmakers, and podcasters. The story of Maura Murray spread far beyond New England. Documentaries aired on national television, podcasts dissected every minute of her last day. Each new retelling brought light, but also noise. The deeper people searched, the more divided the theories became. For every person trying to help, another argued about what had already been said. Still, the case refused to fade. It evolved. In the digital age, Maura's disappearance became one of the internet's first living mysteries. Through it all, the Murray family endured. Fred remained relentless, pressing for answers, pushing for transparency, and keeping Maura's name alive through interviews and advocacy. Her siblings joined online groups, coordinated new searches, and continued to challenge cold case units to revisit the investigation. For them, time wasn't distance, it was fuel. "We can't stop," Fred once said, "because stopping means accepting, and we're not there yet." As the years turned to decades, the story changed shape. The people who'd once searched with flashlights now shared memories instead, remembering that cold night in February, the sound of crunching snow, the sight of those blinking hazard lights. A generation that had grown up hearing about Maura's case online now visited the site in person, leaving flowers or small tokens near the guardrail. The road itself became a quiet memorial, not marked by signs, but by silence. There are still no confirmed sightings, no verified trail, and no definitive explanation for what happened that night. Did she leave willingly? Was she met with harm? Or did she simply vanish into the wilderness that surrounded her? Theories abound, but evidence remains scarce. Investigators say all leads are still welcome, because sometimes, even decades later, one detail can change everything. In the end, Maura Murray's story is not just about disappearance. It's about endurance. The endurance of a father's hope, of a family's fight, of a question that refuses to fade. And maybe that's what keeps her story alive. Not the mystery of where she went, but the proof of how deeply people still care. On a lonely stretch of Route 112, beneath the whispering trees of New Hampshire, that care still lingers, a light that has never gone out. Decades pass, but some stories never loosen their hold. Along Route 112, time feels different, stretched thin between memory and silence. The forest grows, snow falls, seasons change, yet one question keeps echoing through these hills. Where did Maura go? Before the headlines, before the theories, there was a young woman with plans, with friends, with a future already forming in her mind. Photos show her smiling, confident, determined, alive. Those moments frozen in time now hold more weight than anyone could have imagined. They remind us that behind every mystery, there's a person who once dreamed of ordinary days. For the detectives still assigned to the case, the search is now history and hope intertwined. They revisit old files, recheck statements, review data through new technology. There are no breakthroughs, only persistence. The belief that every unanswered question deserves one more look. One of them once said, "You never stop looking, you just pause between searches." In the woods, volunteers still gather. Some are locals, others travel from states away. They bring maps, GPS devices, and hope. They walk the same terrain year after year, knowing the odds, but choosing to walk anyway. To them, Maura is not just a headline, she's a promise unfinished. Online, her name still circulates, in forums, podcasts, documentaries, and social threads that dissect every detail. Some of it helps, some of it hurts, but together it keeps the case alive in a world that forgets too easily. Each post, each video, each voice saying her name, they form a digital vigil that never goes dark. For the Murrays, time has been both enemy and companion. They have learned to live between hope and heartbreak, to wake each morning carrying the same unanswered question. Birthdays come and go, anniversaries pass, yet the search continues, even in silence. Love, in its purest form, refuses to surrender. Somewhere, out there, the road winds on, quiet, empty, eternal. And maybe that's the truth hidden inside this story. Not just loss, but endurance. For every mystery like Maura's, there are people who keep believing, keep walking, keep hoping. That hope is the light left behind, and as long as it burns, she is never truly gone. If you're intrigued by unsolved mysteries and chilling cases, check out my playlist, True Crime, Murders, and Disappearances, for more unsolved cases.